Hey guys, welcome back to... Defense is very important. But let's say hypothetically I said no, and I tried to play the entire game without defense. It limits me to no armor, no accessories that give defense, no defensive bonuses, and why not just not to take any endurance potions while I'm at it? Yeah, no, that seems like a reasonable thing for somebody to do. So now let's do the entire thing with only staves and wands from the wiki. You know, now that I'm thinking about this, I'm not actually sure that it's the best idea. Okay, we're in. I start off this challenge like I need to play through and slap myself together a house and then immediately throw myself into the catacombs. Now, ores in this playthrough are not actually going to be that important to me because I'm not actually able to make armor. But I can still upgrade my tools and I can use them for building later, which is just kind of a nice thing that I like to do personally. My main focus, however, is still going to be life crystals, gems, and silt. Because, I don't know, it's really satisfying to vein mine. I spotted my first bit of loot in here and... I came back up to the surface and it was already halfway through nighttime, which means that it was time to collect some stars. I'd also use this opportunity to explore both sides of my world to an extent, and this world gen mod that I used ended up making some pretty weird stuff. For right now, there's this little granite pit as an entrance to my jungle. There's also a staff of regrowth here, which I appreciate, and it's somehow connected to a mushroom biome, which I also appreciate because yes! Yeah, Hermes boots really early on. That was pretty nice. I'd continue exploring this area, but my brain is urging me right now to drink the purple juice. By this point in my playthrough, I hadn't actually decided on doing the staves and wands thing yet, so I do end up grabbing a Star Fury, which becomes obsolete in just like 2 seconds because I find a sword shrine at the end of my world. Now, I don't end up using this for fighting any bosses or making any main progression, so for my early game pre-Eye of Cthulhu, I am using a sword for a little bit, but... Coming back to my base, I had gathered a few resources underground and I thought that it might be a good time to put myself together a staff, because maybe holding it would make me feel a little bit better about doing the challenge and I wouldn't just decide to go melee or something easier. This is when I made the discovery that you can't actually make the emerald staff in a silver world, because it requires tungsten, and instead I would have to make the funny blue staff. I do not like that. So instead, I'm gonna do what any sensible person would do, and I'm going to go to the desert to get myself an extractinator and a bunch of fossils. Then I'm gonna sift through the materials so that I can actually get what I need. I actually managed to sift through enough things to get myself an emerald staff right away, and... Oh. Okay, so I actually managed to sift enough things to get myself a diamond staff right away. Which is pretty nice if you ask me. It also catapulted me into a big swirling mental pit of courage, thinking that this challenge would not be that bad with the weapon limitation. In fact, my confidence was so high I thought that now would be a great time to take on the Eye of Cthulhu, which with this kind of gear obviously would not very easily. Except, I may have forgotten something kind of important on this fight, actually. Can we time out for like 1 second? Just one. That's alright, I'm not deterred. Guys, I quit mana for good, and now I use it for evil. You know how most people think that buff means like campfires and heart lanterns and stuff like that? Well, buff to me has a few more elements. Like, speed. You know, like the Dune Strider boots on some sand. So what if I do a big long stretch of land and put some sand on it? Yeah, seems like a good idea. Now what if I did this instead and just put it on my arena? Because that's the same thing to do. I took on the Eye of Cthulhu one more time, and this time around, my crippling mana addiction managed to pull me through, and he went down easily. Now, something I didn't realize here is that the Shield of Cthulhu actually gives 2 defense. Usually I only think about the dash, and I somehow didn't notice it, so I came down to fight the brain without realizing that I had 2 defense on me. Well, you know, sometimes we mess up. It happens. It happens to the best of us. And I'd like to sincerely apologize. But I was punished for my sins. Yeah, that's right. Goblin Army immediately after Brain of Cthulhu, which was actually not that bad. I also decided to terraform my land while I was here because running around in like a big flat area is always easier. By this point, I still hadn't realized that I was wearing the Shield of Cthulhu and it was giving me 1 defense, so I decided to take on Skeletron and win. But directly after that incident, I realized my mistake and I took it off. Now though, the Goblin was available to me, so any accessories I had that gave defensive modifiers were actually able to be uncursed. Not that there was that much I was actually planning to wear besides this cloud in the bottle, which I was going to fuse with my balloon anyways and just forget. After terraforming, I was in kind of a building mood, and I was gonna need a lot of NPCs for later, so I built this really, nice layout and got my first traveling merchant, who was selling a DPS meter and a celestial magnet, which I managed to grab. I had a few leftover Eye of Cthulhu summons, so I decided to beat those up. You know what, how about I just fight the King Slime instead? One of the hardest bosses in the game, if I had to be so frank with you. Given the rewards are pretty fantastic though, I sold all of his insides, and here I actually made a very vital decision. I decided not to upgrade to the Spectre boots. because that would mean that I lose my Dunestrider boots, which I was really going to need later for the Wall of Flesh. And seeing as I didn't have a good replacement for that, I decided to come down to the jungle to finally solve my mana problem, because I was very tired of spamming the C button, so I made myself a mana flower. I also banished the Dryad to space because she's a defensive buff, and I can't be having that. It was also time for round 2 on Skeletron, which was actually one of my most stressful fights in the playthrough. It was brutally close to becoming day, but luckily... Yes! Literally all of my luck in the entire playthrough went into that one moment. Get ready for now a blood moon every single night. But that's whatever. I do have access to the dungeon now, which means that I'm able to get my next set of weapons. My next 2 sets of weapons, actually. First of all, I nab myself the P-Scepter and the little thing, the pew! And then I throw myself into the underworld to grab the next upgrade to it, the Flame Lash. This thing is one of the best items in pre-hard mode. Hands down. One of my favorite items in the game right now. Homing, high damage, flame-inducing weapon. And it's just perfect for my class playthrough. With this new stuff and 0 defense to my name, I came back for revenge on the brain. No surprise, the brain went down very easily and I didn't break a sweat. In fact, I only broke 2 of my legs. But I did so to get one of the best accessories in the entire world, the Brain of Confusion. Here is also the point of my playthrough that my friends decided that they were going to crash my f***ing world.
I want to show up in the video and be like, hey guys, Mars here.
What the f***? Huh?
Oh, you got a really nice house. Oh well.
That's a bold statement. It's a bold statement.
Hey Lovey, break this block.
What block? Yes.
Gustavo!
Oh, fuck.
Oh wait, Gustavo Fring? That is him! That is him! Look at him!
I should have been...
It's like there's a chest to the ground. Dorime.
They joined my world and crucified me. He was defenseless and unable to stop their approach.
I'm chaining my stuff!
You bring it down so it doesn't... When a tornado shows up? Are we doing it?
No! It's time for the ritual. Get the f*** out. I actually decided to leave some of the stuff that they built. I really liked Mars's trees, so I decided to fancy it up a little bit. And with the inspiration that these guys gave me, I actually ended up tacking on a lot more to the house. Not before I beat up Queen Bee, though, so that I get a witch doctor. I tacked on a few decorations and, yeah, you know, just a few, just a couple, and, you know, definitely didn't... Now, what exactly is this house for? Well, I actually need access to a very important NPC later on in the game to get one of my final stabs, and her spawn requires that I have every existing town NPC possible besides Santa Claus. So for this portion of the game, I was just looking around to try to get all the NPCs that I could. During the hunt, I found a meteorite. Sold most of it because I can't actually make the armor or the weapons from this, but it will come in handy later on in the hard mode. And also just because why not, decided to build a Starlack pit in my desert, which actually opens up. Most of my pre-Wall of Flesh ended up being just building and looking for NPCs, so I may as well show off a little bit. Yeah, I need to start on my menu screen because I need to record a bit. I clocked an extra 7 hours on my character building the house. I managed to find the web stylist in the midst of all this. And by this point I found the golfer, who is actually the very last pre-hard mode NPC I was able to get, which means it's about time that I take this baby into hard mode. But the stone I was collecting was really only for aesthetics underneath. The actual block I'd be using on top was of course going to be sand, making it extremely easy for me to outspeed the Wall of Flesh. And considering I really wasn't going to be able to tank very many hits, speed was really my best form of defense. Now, here I would make one of the most important discoveries of the entire playthrough. The traveling merchant was selling an item called sake, which is a Japanese alcoholic beverage, which, much like real life, gives a bonus to melee attacks while lowering defense. Now, why do I care about this? I don't have any defense to lower, and I'm not allowed to use melee weapons. Well, defense is actually the only thing that it lowers, which means, potentially, if I were to want a buff like Well Fed, which gives a bonus to defense and attack, it would mitigate all the defensive bonuses, leaving me with only the good stuff that I want. And it turns out, this totally works. I'm even allowed to use the Shield of Cthulhu. I also have a surplus of stars left over, so I decided to turn those all into lanterns and place them underneath my bridge as I went. I also grabbed myself an imp staff because that goes under the staff category, and I figure why not get a little bit of extra help. And oh boy, here we go. Very, very quickly I started having a realization about the WAF. I wasn't actually able to hit the boss. As quickly as I was able to fire, the Hungaries would just keep on respawning faster than I could click, and they ate up all of my shots, making it nigh impossible to hit this guy. There were a few things I could do to upgrade. First of all, Bewitching Table, which does not exist because of my World Gen mod, making my dungeon this thing! So that was fun to realize. And no, I didn't cheat it in. I probably should have, but I didn't. I expanded the bridge a little bit more, not being able to do anything with my minion, but that resulted in the same kind of thing. This time I got a lot closer, but still not quite there. By my third attempt, I was insanely close to killing it. So close that I really had the confidence that I'd be able to do this without any assistance. But at the end of the day, I just kept dying over and over and over again. Normally with bosses, this isn't that big of a deal because I'll have a surplus of resources to be able to make their summoning item. But with this, I had to wait every single time for the guide to come during the day, drop him into hell, and give it another attempt. During this, goblin armies, blood moons, everything in between. I built the guide Killinator 3000 just so I could make this a little bit easier, but it still wasn't enough. The Wall of Flesh was just completely destroying my playthrough and my mentality. By somewhere around like attempt 7, I was not feeling it anymore. Especially when stuff like this would happen. Look, one magma slime died. My entire arena is filled with lava. Completely. I never see the end of it. I just die. I came up with one idea, which was to rig my arena to explode and do explosive damage to it. That did a little bit, but not nearly enough to qualify me buying all of that dynamite and doing it again. Besides, the setup time was way more annoying than how many attempts it would probably take me. Here's my little explanation section with Eris. Oh, yo, what's up?
Have you made it into hard mode yet?
No! I can't kill the Hungaries faster than they spawn. So, my staff and wand for this is going to be a gun. Nope, I have 94 stars. I think I might be okay on that.
Oh, you're doing what I told you?
Yeah. 77 magic damage. Guide Voodoo Doll? Here we go. What you got? Come on, please, yes! F you! First things first, I got access to 3 brand new staves, and considering I don't need armor, there's barely a point to me getting the ores besides the anvil, so these are pretty much the only thing I'm going for. First off, we got the meteorite staff. This thing is awesome and very easy to craft immediately into hard mode. Another super easy one that you can go and get is the frost staff. I feel like this one gets overlooked a lot, but it's really good, and it got a buff, I believe, in 1.4. One of the staff you can grab is the spider staff, which just drops from arachnids underground. Not too bad once you got a meteorite staff on you. From right here, there's one other thing that I wanted to get directly off the bat, and that's a pair of wings. My favorite pair of wings I can get directly off into hard mode is the frost wings. Because all it takes is me beating up these frost golems, and usually I get some pretty good armor out of it too, but for this I was just doing it for the wings. I farmed in the hollow for just a little bit because I wanted to test out my abilities against the bosses. And yeah, got a Nimbus staff somehow pretty early on, but really didn't feel like it was helping out too much. Mechs were not looking like they were going to be my favorite thing, and they weren't. Naturally, I got distracted after fighting them for a little bit because it really was not that engaging, and I decided I should upgrade my gear a little bit. So here's a Star Cloak. I also came back to fight the Wall of Flesh because I didn't get myself a mage emblem, and of course, it takes me like 15 attempts to get him to drop it, and then he finally does, and okay. With this boost in gear, I really thought that I'd be able to fight the mech bosses a little bit more proficiently, but that was not proving to be the case. I grabbed myself a few more buffs because I started running low and a traveling merchant was by with some pad thai, and this began a cycle. Go back into the hollow, farm for things, blood moon. The wyverns are here, a goblin army is approaching from the east. But something finally came along that was a little bit worthwhile. The traveling merchant was selling a mystic robe, and earlier on I acquired myself a magic hat from the same guy. Turns out, this is a 2-piece armor set with a really good set bonus for 12% increased magic damage, and it gives the perfect amount of defense to be completely negated by Sake's debuff. So from now on, I have basically an Avenger emblem just on my body. This means I'm not allowed to use well-fed, but the damage bonus is way higher. Here I also built a really simple event farm in my snow biome, and decided to farm the pirates so I get some money and actually upgrade my gear a little bit more. Once that was said and done, it was time for my round 2 on the mech bosses. This time around, I was able to take out the destroyer pretty easily actually, despite a few surprises. Oh, it took me 2 attempts. And both my arms. But the destroyer was only the first of my problems. Now, I have the twins. They definitely won't take me like, I don't know, 4 days or something like that. I don't know why, but these guys decided that I was gonna be trapped in purgatory for the next couple of hours. Like, at least 72 of hours. I don't know why. I just could not get past the twins. I do not like them. A lot of people find that they're very easy, but I do not play this game with a strategy. I'm just wildly flailing my limbs around, trying to attack the boss as much as possible and dodging based on pure instinct, which does not work so well for a no-defense playthrough. One night, I made a decision. I was going to build a fucking machine that I could use to gun these guys down with no problems. Holy shit. And that is exactly what I did. This is actually a really old school method that people used to use early on in the game's development for farming the mech bosses. It was pretty excellent for money or just getting souls to farm for the events. But today it's saving me. Twins went down really easily and Skeletron Prime followed. I never really had any issues with Skeletron Prime. I wish I had something interesting to say about him, but whatever, it's plant time. I popped down to the jungle and I found a bulb really quickly actually. It was in a pretty fine spot, pretty low down, so I decided to build my entire arena around it, which I made pretty excessively large, considering how I usually fight it, but with no Why would she spawn above me? Why would she do that? Why did that have to happen? Alright, nonetheless, I still had to find another bulb, which, considering what I just came out of with how long the twins took, I was willing to wait quite a long time. I was not willing to wait for the next 7 hours. Which is definitely an over-exaggeration, but the Crimson was overtaking the top of my jungle, so I guess the spawn wasn't perfect. But man, I was looking for this thing for hours. So long, in fact, that I filled out all of my HP before I found a new one, which no complaining. On the other hand, I got so bored I decided to build this giant Plantera farm, which might have been one of the first peaceful endeavors that I had this entire playthrough. Oh, come on! Leave me alone! Torch God. All bosses play through. Am I right? It finished up pretty quickly and I moved myself over to my sleeping quarters, which really sped up the process in spawning another bulb. I managed to find another one while just exploring around. And now it's time... I love this game. I came back up to fight the pirates a little bit more because money, and then I ended up finding myself a frozen key. I came back into the jungle and as promised, I filled out the rest of my HP. Got a few more blood moons and finally found myself another bulb. And this time around, I was not going down without a fight. Meteor Staff does work on the plant. Even with no great set bonuses, I was able to do a lot of damage. As long as I kept myself away from her projectiles, I was totally fine. But even still, I wasn't very good at that, so I ended up doing a lot of nurse healing. And at the end of the day, the plant ended up going down. And that means that I have access to my next tier of weapon. So instead of going straight for the Golem, first I'm going to gear up. With Plantera defeated, I have access to the Cyborg, who's the final NPC that I need to be able to get the princess to arrive. So I threw myself together a little mushroom biome here because I didn't have the truffle yet, and I gave her a sweet house with a heated floor. For those of you who don't know, the princess drops a very good staff, which is essentially the Inferno fork, except it appears at your cursor instead of shooting a projectile. It does an insane amount of damage, and I was planning to get it. So with the knowledge of what I've learned from the guide Killinator 3000, I put myself together a little house for her here to make it a little bit easier on me to farm this thing. And in the meantime, I have access to a lot more staves. Defeating Plantera means that the hard mode dungeon is now active, and pretty much every magic casting enemy down there drops something that will be very good for event farming. So down I go. Surprisingly super fast, like probably the third Diabolist I fought dropped me an Inferno fork, which is insane! We also had a spooky, scary event and I hid in my bunker because I didn't want to deal with it. But after that it was dungeon farming and dungeon farming. Actually, I considered putting a bed at the dungeon so I could just go down over and over again, but I decided ultimately I wanted a teleporter down here, and because I had the grand design it was really easy just to put one down. Not long after that I got myself a Shadow Beam staff, which is one of my personal favorites. But let's not forget the main reason I was getting these weapons. See, the very final staves I can get in the game aren't actually from the dungeon. They're from the Pumpkin and Frost Moon respectively. And holy shit, they're awful. I already don't like these when I have defense. So with none, I don't really know about that. I did, however, in the midst of this, end up getting the Resonant Scepter. I actually got it off camera. This is like one of the few items that I'd ever gotten off camera. Unfortunately, I don't have that footage, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it. Also, remember that Frost Key earlier? I sure didn't. I ran back and I got myself the Staff of the Frost Hydra, which is pretty good actually, and proved to be a pretty nice help in me fighting these events. Which are still not fun! Death is everywhere. Wyverns spawn on the surface. You've been hit by this little string of wood and killed instantly because you don't have any defense. This whole no defense thing is starting to get on my nerves. Why did I just do this? Why didn't I just play a normal game? Why can't I just play the game like normal? Regardless, you can't stop me from beating these guys up until I get what I want. I've got 3 stabs that are very, very important to me fighting the final boss in this game, and I'm going to get them. First of which, the Razor Pine. I adore this thing. This is one of my favorite weapons that has ever been in the game. It's been in for so long now, and it's still insanely good. But as mentioned, it's not the only thing that I can get. And I'll be using it to get the Blizzard Staff, which I happen to get on my first Ice Queen, actually. This thing is equally as insane, and I'm surprised that more people don't use it. With that, I've only got 1 more to go. So I took a little time and upgraded my accessories, and then got back to the Pumpkin Moon. The Bat Scepter is another one of my favorites. Usually it gets outclassed really easily by the Razorblade Typhoon, but considering that's a book and I'm only allowed to use stabs and wands, it was going to be my best alternative. And damn is it a good one. Mars had mentioned to me earlier as well, this is a no defense playthrough, and there's a perfect boss for no hits. So I thought, maybe it'd be a good idea to take on the Empress of Light. I won, and after that sweet victory, it's finally time for the Golem, who went down tremendously easily with these weapons. And while I was feeling confident, I decided to take on Duke Vishron. I did not, in fact, win against Duke Vishron. I'll admit my loss there. That being said, he doesn't drop anything useful to me anyways, so I guess there's only one last thing to do. Activate the pillars. Lunatic Cultist I thought was going to prove to be an insanely difficult fight. I'm always bad at dodging this, but then it occurred to me that I always fight this guy in multiplayer. This is my first single player playthrough in a really long time, and it turns out his attacks really aren't that chaotic if they're not shooting at other players. That being said though, it doesn't last very long because the solar pillar decided to show up right on top of me. And ain't no way in hell I'm dealing with that right now. Take me to the nebula pillar, where I can just fly in circles and not deal with it. Can we collectively agree that the pillar events suck and they shouldn't exist? I don't think I've ever met anybody that likes these. Yeah, the artwork is cool, but that's about the extent of it. The actual gameplay design here is a little bit rough. Especially you, Solar Pillar! There's just no fun to be had in the pillar events, man. And ultimately for me, I'm not allowed to use any of the items. Technically, I could use a Stardust Cell, but my nerves are on me, and I want to hang on to every fragment that I have. I fought the Locust Invasion, which was terrifying, by the way, and finally the bubbles. The pillar opened up and it was time. No more running, no more hiding, no more upgrading. I was at the peak that I could possibly be. My accessories were maxed out for damage, wings were completely replaced by the broom, and the Moon Lord was approaching. I finally made it. The final hurdle I would have to overcome to complete this cursed series. There's nothing that— The Moon Lord is not looking like he's gonna be that easy. Luckily I was able to make myself 2 more summons, but the first attempt on those was a complete bust. By this point I'm out of options. My last fight has to be the last one, otherwise I risk doing the Pillars event over and over again. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and for my final Moon Lord fight, I called in some backup. I hate the goblin. He goes every time I try to buy something. I don't like it. And what did we talk about? Microphones, baby! It's time to finally finish this. I had a brand new strategy. I started myself at the ocean. My plan of attack is to outspeed him. If I fly in a straight line, then teleport back to this side of the ocean, his projectiles became extremely easy to dodge. And all I had to worry about was firing in a straight line.
Also, I'm thinking about buying the mic that's just like Bluetooth. The one that's like, not Bluetooth, but like
Rode shotgun?
Instead of having the Rode shotgun thingy.
But then it occurred to me, Mars wasn't just trying to ask me about microphones. He was trying to distract me, and not just from the fight. He was trying to get me to zone out so that I would have a complete autopilot battle with the Moon Lord. And it was working. Slowly but surely as our conversation went on, the actual fight in the background was starting to become second nature. I've done it so many times, the only thing that was holding me back was the stress of having no defense. But with someone here to distract me, the fight was as natural as ever. I'd be lying if I said my palms weren't sweating by the end of it, but attack by attack, the Moon Lord was going down. And before I knew it, like, way before I knew it, it was done.
And then I was like, who's Ethereal?
Also, did I win?
Oh, you got him?
Wait, did I win? Oh,
Wait, what? Oh my god!
he died. I just beat all of Terraria with 0 defense. So I guess that answers my question. Was it possible? Yeah. Was it fun? No. There's a few things I would have done differently. Stabs and wands was a stupid idea, but I stuck with it until the end besides Wall of Flesh. And the World Gen mod. I was not really having a good time with all these wyverns spawning on the surface. After like 50 hours of that kind of starts to suck. But other than that, this is a really cool challenge. And even if you don't make YouTube videos, I kind of encourage you to try it. Maybe not on expert mode if you're a new player, but overall it really adds a cool new element to the game. I personally don't focus on dodging a whole lot and usually rely on defense, and just chug a health potion if anything goes wrong. But this was a totally new experience. And I think for any veteran player of the game, or even just well-versed player, it's a really good way to shake it up without straying away from vanilla too much. This video also took me an enormous amount of time to make, so if you enjoyed it, I really appreciate it if you could subscribe and leave a like. I know you probably hear that a lot, you probably even hear this line a lot, but that does legitimately help the channel out. But anyways, that's about it. See ya!